Hello, it's Hoops here, and welcome to Stories from the Pack, brought to you by the Wolves Fancast. First of all, thanks for tuning in, if either you're watching or listening to us. Stories from the Pack, if you're not aware, is basically a series where we invite a Wolves fan on to share their own story following this great club. So for this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by a man affectionately known to me and many others as Crumpy, but to give him his official title is the official Wars historian, Peter Crump. Pete, how you doing, mate?
I'm all right, thank you. Thanks for asking me to come on.
No, it's great. And I really, sorry, Pete, go on.
Great pleasure to be on. So thank you for asking me.
No, you're more than welcome. I mean, for a bit of context, me and Pete go a little way back, actually, back to sort of, I think, playing football on the green at Ford Houses. So we do know each other. But so it's great because when I do this, I've done it with people that I've met face to face, people that I haven't met. But I think what I want to come over with this series is that everybody has a story. Everybody has a relationship with their football club. There are parallels between them, but I think everybody's got a story to share. And as will become apparent in the episode, we'll discuss your current role. But essentially, as I am, and as people listening are, you're a Wolves fan, and that's where we want to start, I guess, with the roots of that. So if you can take me back. So as I say, in terms of your first Wolves memories, now, whether or not you remember in detail your first match, because I don't, but I remember what it was like. I remember the atmospheres and the smells and so forth and everything associated with it. So if you could just talk us through perhaps your first memories of Molineux as they were, Pete.
I'd say I had to check this because I've been asked this question a few times over the last, particularly over the last 12 months on certain other podcasts. And my first game, I had to check this with my older brother Michael because he took me. I've obviously got two older brothers, 16 and 14 years older than me. And it was my oldest one of the two that took me to my first game. And it was actually New Year's Day, 1991. And
Okay.
I don't remember a great deal of it about it other than I remember we were sat in the red seats of the then John Island stand in the bottom tier. So it would be the away end now. And I just remember the pitch being quite a long way away. I think it was a year or two before they moved it to nearer to the John Island stand. Because I actually went just before Sir Jack's redevelopment. So I do remember seeing the South Bank on the left. The Waterloo Road stand was just miles away. And the North Bank was there as well. But obviously, both of them had been condemned after Bradford. So there was nobody on there. And I just looked in the book. There was just over 18,000 there. So a low gate on current standards, certainly for league games anyway. But yeah, one of my other memories of Molineux is I remember being in the back of my dad's car. So I was 5 at my first game, and when I was about 6 or 7, it was 1992. I remember going up. We must have been going up to town, and I remember seeing the Waterloo Road stand after it had been had the serious, quite serious fire. There was a fire at the Waterloo Road stand. I just remember seeing all the back of the stand towards the South Bank end being all charred. I remember that. And then I kind of remember the first season that I remember properly was probably the season, I think it was 93, 94, was we had an FA Cup run, Chelsea in the quarterfinal. We got to Chelsea.
Yes.
Bridge.
Gavin Peacock, I think, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember my dad, the first game I remember going with my dad was Crystal Palace in the third round. I think we played them consecutive Saturdays at Molineux. And I went to the FA Cup match. And I just remember my dad allowing me to stay up for match of the day because we were on it on the FA Cup games. And it wasn't possible for us to be, of course, on match of the day then because we were in what is now the Championship. Yeah, and I remember that. I remember that cup run. I remember going again with both my brothers this time. I remember going with, I don't know if you remember, we played Notts Forest in the League Cup, 94. Paul Birch.
Yes.
Yeah, they had Colin Moore and Brian Roy and people like that playing for them.
Yeah.
And then I remember my first Black Country derby. I think it was the 2-0 win, Richards and Roberts. So it was the corresponding fixture to
To
the
the 4-2,
4-2.
yeah.
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 And I didn't realise at that point that I would never see us win it. Well, I remember watching the 4-2 on the telly, but yeah, it took us till January to see anything like that again. So yeah, that's kind of my early memories, really. And I remember the ground being redeveloped and things like that. So yeah, I feel quite lucky to see certainly the ground pre 91, 92 when the redevelopment started. But I've got to be honest, I don't remember a lot about the South Bank, North Bank, and the Waterloo Road stand. They were really on their last legs, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a bit too young to really understand and comprehend certainly the history behind the stands anyway.
And I think on that, Pete, as well, and this is probably a quick plug for your talks as well. I recently attended one of Pete's talks. So there's a series of them at the museum taking place, and one was on the 80s. And similar to yourself, I reckon my first game was around about 1990 for context. It could have even have been, I remember my dad taking me to watch Bully play Czechoslovakia in the sort of warm up to that World Cup. So it's a similar era. So I remember the red seats, and that will resonate with people where you could actually get five-a-side games between the sideline and the pitch with that far away. But so I think what's really interesting is we kind of we certainly weren't aware at that time what had gone on that corresponding 10 years, and that's for perhaps another show. And as I say, that's something which I know Pete articulated really well to give an idea of kind of where the club was at that point. So I guess you were coming in as a supporter of that backdrop, but I kind of, we were switching into the Sir Jack era, I guess, at that point, weren't we, really?
Yeah, I think we came along just after the we came just after the Division 4 and 3 and Sherpa Van. We were probably no disrespect to the players at the time, but we were a little bit mediocre for a few years because I think, to be fair, Sir Jack had more priorities with the infrastructure of the club rather than the team. But then, of course, I remember when we signed like Jeff Thomas, David Kelly, and Cyril Regis, and Cyril Regis is one of the players that I remember early. I think I remember my dad telling me, I think he was warming up the one game, and I remember my dad telling me what a wonderful player he'd been. With all due respect, Cyril was past his best at Wolves, and he's, of course, a legend at West Brom. So, yeah, he's one of the first to remember. So, yeah, we were in that, kind of that transition period of the club, really changing beyond recognition.
No, absolutely. And I guess you mentioned the Black Country Derby, which was probably your first memorable game. And as you say, in the context of it, we're playing them on quite a regular basis. And then many of us will know kind of how things that happened thereafter. But talk me through some of your favourite games, either within that era or sort of from that era to today. Obviously, the Black Country Derbies are huge, but I'm saying any other, of course there are, but any memorable games that sort of stand out when, or kind of give you goosebumps when you think of games that you attended?
I remember that West Brom game, which I believe would have been 96, 97, I think. I remember that game, just the atmosphere, and again, probably didn't appreciate the history of the fixture at the time. The two founder members, because this might be an unpopular thing to say on a Wolves podcast. I don't, I like the humour between the two clubs, but I don't like it when it gets nasty. I actually respect them as well because they're a founder member, and we're nothing without each other. And that goes for all of our West Midlands rivals, because the derbies, I just think, are fantastic. They're not fantastic like maybe when you lose them for a few days after. But I remember the West Brom game. And then, bizarrely, I remember about 2001. It was the first away game I went to on my own accord, like on the travel coaches. I used to go on the travel coach. I remember Watford away, Sean Newton scoring. Another one that stands out bizarrely is my first ever Wolves away game was Reading away, because my uncle Peter, who used to work for Wolves back in the 70s and 80s, he was living in Reading at the time, working for Marks and Spencer.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to Elm Park, and it was the game when Reading scored 2 goals in injury time. We were winning 1-0, and I think it was one of the first times Mark McGee had been back to Reading, and yeah, he didn't get the most welcome, I have to say. Nor did Michael Gilks from memory. I think, yeah, he was in the wars that day, Gilks, to be fair. And I just remember open terracing. I just remember it being a ground that I could only imagine what Molineux was like years before, just on a bigger scale. Open terracing. Yeah, I remember going to Port Vale away as well. One of my early games, about 98, 99. And I remember standing in the old terracing at the side and getting absolutely drenched all game, like seriously drenched. And I just remember thinking, what is all this about? Is this really what people class as pleasure? But yeah, so it's some of them games really. It was our early kind of Wolves games, sadly, was synonymous with the playoff near misses. And just not quite getting over the line, which was, heartbreaking really when you think back, especially how much, money that Sir Jack gave to the football club. It's sad, but yeah, another legend. Where would we be without Sir Jack? Maybe we wouldn't be doing this for a start today. But yeah, that's some of my early memories. Certainly memories either when I was having to be taken to the game and before I could go like of my own accord.
Amazing, mate. And as you say, it was there were lots of ups and downs. We were kind of the Neely team, weren't we, of that era? And you mentioned Jeff Thomas, and I remember the signing, how that was sort of like wow, and such a statement signing, wasn't it, at the time? And Daly and Froggatt, and bless them both. Certainly the former had his injury issues, but fortunately Sir Jack had his day as such at Cardiff, and iconic memory of the thumbs up and so forth. But yeah, it was a rough ride at times watching us, but then there's a bit of nostalgia, isn't there? Because I watched Wolves recently play the academy game, or is it the academy game? What was the Sherpa Van against Port Vale recently? And I kind of got nostalgic because those are the sort of sides that I was used to us facing. I remember the John DeWolf hat trick at Port Vale even as well, and
I remember that. Yeah, that wasn't the game I was at. The one I was at, I think Goodman and Friedman scored. I think it was the game in between Christmas and New Year.
Brilliant.
I remember DeWolf, another cult hero, really.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. It's not always the sort of the fashionable games. It's the fact that you remember, as you say, remember your first game, but then also there's new first, where it's the first time you get the travel coach, or the first time like I've met you on many away games, for example, and that's a whole different experience in itself. And you could do a whole series on away games as well. But no, that's fantastic. I guess moving on to the next topic. So, new to this series, we're looking at 5-a-sides, and for anyone listening, get your 5-a-sides in, because I'd be really interested to see who you choose, because this is only something I discuss sort of down the pub as such, and I think it's really interesting. So I'm asked Pete to kindly pick 5 players, past or present, to form an ultimate 5-a-side team, and it's probably a tricky one for Pete because with his current job, he meets so many players as well, and I'm sure you don't want to leave anyone out. Yeah. But if you had to choose 5 for the purpose of this question, do you want to take the floor and go through your side?
Yeah, for the goalkeeper, it's a difficult question because like we've seen Wolves, even me, I've seen Wolves in 3 different levels, and we've become totally different since Fosun, and the standard of the player and the certain players coming in. But it's no disrespect to the previous players. The club has changed probably 3 times in our era, like quite in a big way. But the keeper, I went for Matt Murray because I think that our current goalkeeper is is great, and so was Rui Patricio, and it was a really difficult one because I don't think I've ever seen what I would call even remotely poor goalkeeper for Wolves. I think we've always been strong with goalkeepers, and it was between Rui, Matt, and Mickey Stowell for me because, but I went for Matt just because, and I know nothing about coaching. What I know about coaching and that side of the game, you can fit on the back of the stamp. But I just feel that Matt was he was very naturally gifted, and you know, it's well documented. It was just such a shame about what happened to him with injuries. I think he would have, without doubt, gone on to play in the top league with or without us. And you know, a lot of people say England, etc. But yeah, I think I'd have to go for Matt just because. Yeah, he was the first goalkeeper when I was going away with my mates, and you know, when I was probably watching the team week in, week out, and yeah, I got a lot of time for Matt as well. He's a really nice guy, and that's not why I picked him. I picked him just purely his footballing ability.
Brilliant. No, good shot. I mean, yeah, Matt Murray, you're right. I'm sure he's going to feature on a lot of sides, and you're right. You know that we got a few through the academy, didn't we, as well? At one point, good keepers, and then Stowe. You know, Mike Stowe was sort of synonymous with that time as well. But I remember the duels he had with Kamara at Albion. You know, with Matt Murray, he was just immense. So brilliant. So I'm just making a note of these because I'm going to keep these for prosperity for future. So brilliant. So we've got Matt Murray in goal. So who's up next, mate?
I've got to go again. I've had some brilliant captains, even in my era, but I couldn't go much past Connor Cody because I think he's one of my all-time favourite players because the way he conducted himself as captain, and he wasn't the best player in that team, but I think he was one of the most important. And I think that the way he conducted himself as captain, the way he transitioned into a new position, he survived the club changing beyond recognition because obviously he was signed on the jacket as a midfield player. And I just thought in a five-a-side team, he can pass the ball, he can do a bit of defending, and he'd probably be my captain. Without doubt, he'd be my captain in this team. And I just think just a great ambassador for Wolverhampton Wanderers, both on and off the pitch. So yeah, Connor is definitely one of my favourite all-time Wolves players. I haven't got anything negative to say about him at all, really.
No, a great captain, great, like you say, great leader, and you know, you look back, you referenced the jacket era. You know, he was even playing right back, wasn't he, just before he came in, and probably his future was uncertain. But I think, without sounding twee about it, a captain, you know, I still place a lot of emphasis on a captain as a fan. I believe that the leader of the shirt, the leader of the club, and as you say, what you know, a great role model. So we've got Murray, Cody, and who's up next?
The next one was, I think he's probably the best player I've ever seen in a Wolves shirt. I don't know the definition of a world-class player, but I think this guy is potentially the one world-class player I've ever seen in a Wolves shirt, or he's as close to it as we can get. It's got to be Martinho.
Yeah.
Without doubt. Again, watching that team and seeing players of that caliber in a Wolves shirt, it was a little bit like pinch me time, because I'm like, is this really happening? And again, nothing against the players that before. We've had some really good midfielders. I mean, even at League One, Kevin McDonald and people like that, and Simon Osborne when I was a kid, but you know, just João Martinho was just like, I can't think of a word for him really. Just outstanding, brilliant footballer, consummate professional. The sort of player that I'd only usually see in Euros and World Cups and in the Panini sticker book is the best way I can put it. But now he's here.
But no, you're right though. And it's still, I had so many sort of pinch me moments in that sort of first season, for example, when we got Martini. I was like, he's playing for our football club. And I was like, wow, rub your eyes. There he is in the flesh. So brilliant. And are you going sort of two up top, or have you got someone else in the middle with Martinio? Or
Yeah, I've got someone else in the middle that can push forward. But again, tactically, I'm going to be all over the place, so I'll probably lose every game. The next one for me was Jota.
Yeah.
Again, could create goals, score goals. Nightmare to play against, I would imagine, as an opponent. Just again, just a quality player that I think grew. We helped him grow into the player he is now. And well, Jurgen Klopp signed him, and he plays for Liverpool. That's a testament in itself. And I just thought he was just brilliant to watch. Every time he got the ball, you were on your feet. You were like, what's going to happen now? So yeah, it had to be Jota.
Brilliant. Yeah. What can you say? You've summed it up well with Jota. Hell of a player for us, and still is, and he's proven himself at Liverpool. So who is so we got Murray, Cody, Martinio, Jota. So who's the final sort of piece of the jigsaw?
It was a toss-up.
Not Frankowski.
I wanted to choose someone kind of like from when I was a kid, and I was toying between Robbie Keane and Steve Bull, because obviously when I was about 11, 12, 13, Robbie Keane was my favourite player, because I think we saw Bully. He may have been just slightly past his best when we saw Bully, to be fair. We didn't see Bully the 50 goal a season, and by about 93, 4, he was starting to have a few injuries, wasn't he? But I went with Bully because Robbie Keane had a fantastic career. He was fantastic for Wolves, but Bully, although he did play for the other team, he's synonymous. We don't need to go into it really. Bully's Bully. So yeah, it had to be Bully.
Some players speak for themselves, don't they? Like, as you say. But so we've got, just to round up, we've got Matt Murray, Connor Cody, also skipper in the side, Joe Martinio, Diego Jota, and Stephen George. Well, what a team! What a team!
Probably not got enough defenders though.
I don't think Bully's going to do too much tracking back for you, but no, and I think you've touched on some of your favourite players there as well, which is brilliant. So I guess the next sort of part of this is sort of tailored to yourself. So Wolves fan as evident growing up, passionate about the club, and then as I introduced you at the start of the show, for those who aren't aware, your current position is club historian. So to get to that stage, could you perhaps provide a little bit of context in terms of how you got to that sort of current role?
Yeah, so I came back I went to university from where are we, 2006 to 2010. So I was going to games sporadically then, just for financial reasons, and studying takes up your time. And then when I came back from university, I started getting into the flag waving, the fan volunteer stuff. That was around 2012. And then I was approached by Pat Quirk, my predecessor, back in 2018. And Pat basically came up to me and said, we're getting inundated with tours. We're having 50, 60 people turn up on Sundays, and he needed some help. So I started helping Pat around the back end of the Nuno Championship winning year. And then I worked with Pat quite a lot. He became a really, really good friend of mine as well. So I've said this before. I respect all of those players in the five-a-side team, and I respect anyone that's kicked a ball for Wolves, actually, whether it's youth level, reserve level, first team. But I couldn't really aspire to be a professional footballer because my football career is probably finished on that green that you mentioned earlier.
Mine too.
So I respect all the players, but like Pat is kind of my Wolves hero really, because he helped me no end in things that he didn't realise he was helping me with. I mean, I've had a few issues in the past with my mental health, and Pat helped me with that, even though he didn't know he was. And then sadly we lost Pat a couple of years ago. He passed away sadly on the Sunday after we played Leeds. So that was when Podence scored. Was that 2022? The years fly by. And then
they do.
I was offered the position in September last year, and it's like I feel like really privileged to do it. But I've had some fantastic support off many people, both before and after, and a lot of that is the Wolves supporters as well. So yeah, that's how it really came about. It was a steady progress, but yeah, that's how I'm where I am today.
Brilliant. And I guess in terms of your the role that you have, there's I guess the contact that you have with supporters. There's the contacts I guess that you have with ex-players. I believe that you're part of the Hall of Fame committee. Is that right as well?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I guess really there's no favourite part. Is it all encompassing? I guess is it from seeing I guess even perhaps a non-Wolves fan that visits the museum for some time and learns something, or a lifelong fan, or seeing a John Richards walk through the door. I guess it's varied in that sense, and you must love what you do and the opportunities that you have.
Yeah, I love it all really. I love archiving the collection, auditing the collection, the stadium tours, doing the stadium tours with the ex-players. That's really like really privileged to do that, because we're really lucky. We've got a good squad of ex-players at the museum, and every single one of them, from my point of view, and I mean this, they're not just ex-players. They're really nice people, and I really enjoy working with them, and I really enjoy trying to bring their careers and their stories to life as well, because I'd say I might be able to talk about the history and I might be able to talk about dates, but I can't tell people what it's like to wear a Wolves shirt. I can't. But those guys and girls as well. We've had Rachel Unit. She works with us a lot. They can tell us what it's like to wear the Wolves shirt and other team shirts as well. So we often talk about their careers elsewhere as well. So yeah, and I really don't care if it's a VIP tour or a standard tour. It's about making sure that the supporter or the visitor or supporters of other clubs, they go away from Wolves and they've had a good couple of hours with us. So that's my main aim: make sure they go away and promote us to a point, but just make sure they go away happy and they've had a good time here.
It's all about experience, isn't it? And I think I can say this, and I'm saying it not just as a friend. I'm just saying it as someone who's been on the tour. I learned quite a bit. I do these podcasts. I'm a bit of a Wolves geek, but I learned so much, and also with the museum as well. When I went recently to one of your events and had a look around, what I was really pleased to see, which you kind of touched on there, was there's no Wolves women's section, for example. Yeah. And I think I recall there was an event, wasn't there, I believe, to sort of herald them in and kind of launch that, which is amazing. So it's grown. I guess it's grown all the time, isn't it? Really, in terms of how does that come about? Do you constantly sort of reassess what's in there? I know things will evolve with dates and so forth, but you're kind of always looking at what you can include and perhaps what sections may not have had the exposure previously as well.
Yeah, it's for me. It's about we're really lucky that we've got such a fantastic team. Every single one of our tour guides is a total expert, and I mean that. I would send my mom and dad or my best friend on a tour with any one of our tour guides without a shadow of a doubt. But with the museum, it's been through like an interesting journey, because it opened in November 2012. And
Right.
then
Oh, wow. Yeah.
it suffered 2 relegations, and people like Packwork, Neil Pennington, Dave Jones, good friends of mine, and Dave's still a tour guide and helps on a Friday. Those people steered the museum through some turbulent times, and they left a perfect museum. But for us, it's now just evolving it and freshening it up. So that's what we're doing at the moment, is to protect the legacy that those people have left. But also, really importantly, we don't want people just to come to the Wolves Museum once. We want them to come back. We're not, of course, expecting people to come every week. That's unrealistic. But now, if you haven't been for 6 or 7 months, come back, because you might be surprised what you see. And the Wolves Women display is a good one, because I'd stand corrected on this. I don't think there was anything in there until about 2 or 3 years ago, and it was mainly my boss Sam that drove this forward before I was full time. But the Wolves women's display now is a lot bigger than it was, but it's now also going into another new area of the museum, so it's going to get even bigger. So
Brilliant.
that's well on the agenda. Absolutely. And when Anna comes on next week, reminder, I have invited her to the museum, because it'd be great to see her. I was reading about her career the other day. Absolutely phenomenal, really.
Yeah. No, sorry, but no, you're right, and I think for myself, because my eldest daughter plays football as well, so I've kind of got a vested interest. And when I came, you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I couldn't remember there being sort of a display, so that was great to see, and great to see it grow, as you say. So, there's 2 aspects here for those that want to, if they've got friends or family, haven't been for a while. There's the opportunity to go on the website and look at a tour, but also I've been to a couple of events at the museum, and I brought some of my friends along with me recently. We saw Pete do a great talk on the 80s that I referenced earlier, the 90s, even for the heartache, reliving that playoffs was stuff. But it was great. But I tell you what was really good, and it's probably because my memory's awful at times. I relived some. I'm on for nostalgia, I think. But also for learning more as well. So I think it's great. I know you've got another talk coming up regarding the 70s. I've got the dates here for those listening if they're interested. I will just stress this is at time of recording. So if you listen to this further down the line and that it's sold out, don't come for me. But as time is recording, there's tickets available. But there will also, hopefully, as people come to in a minute, perhaps be opportunities for other shows. But as per time of recording, there's the 10th of October, Thursday, the 10th of October. I believe you go on the website, go to Wolves Events, you'll find the details. And also, you referenced ex-players. I noticed with your Hall of Fame connection, there's also John Richards coming up on Friday, the 1st of November. So is that hopefully the talks and the Hall of Fame, are they going to kind of run parallel? And have you got others in the pipeline potentially?
I mean, as you will be fully aware, we've had the auditorium refurbished, literally finished 2 weeks ago, and we've now got 75 really comfortable cinema seats. Because I know, I'd like to thank everyone that's come to a talk museum experience over the last few years, because we didn't have the most comfortable seats. So they're like benches, weren't they? And they've all gone. So please come along, everyone. Like the talk on the 70s, it'll be 69 to 1980 basically, and we'll be looking at what happened at the club there in that era, which it's been really interesting to research. It's nearly ready to go, very nearly ready. It's nearly finished. It's the 4th talk we've done, because we did first one was the downfall, 79 to 86, which was I think was quite depressing in parts for people. Then we did the uplift in the late 80s, then the 90s. So it's the 4th one. So we're looking at doing a talk every 2 months. So even if you're listening to this after that date, just keep checking Wolves Museum Presents, because the next talk will be available. And if all goes to plan, we aim to do every era. and then we'll have a look at other things after, like drilling down into maybe certain aspects of each era. And the evening with John Richards, we've called it In Conversation with John. It's about getting into John's life as well, not just as a Wolves player, but who is John Richards. But please come to that, because again, John's he's first and foremost a really, really, really nice man, and he's incredibly supportive of the museum, and he's a credit to the Wolves shirt without a shadow of a doubt.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, as I've said to Pete before, yes, we're absolutely biased, and there's no better place to be biased than on a Wolves podcast. I get that. However, even if I was to be balanced, this is a unique football club, and the ups and downs and the subsections, and when you've talked about the period of time, the backdrop of society, and there's so much. It's as I say, it's a brilliant evening. If you get a chance, then go for it. All the information will be on the website as well. We'll be shortly closing the pod, so just want to say really thank you to Pete for coming on and giving up his time this evening. I want to say thank you to everybody who continues to support the podcast. If you follow the Wolves Fancast on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, and so forth, give us a like on YouTube. We really do appreciate it. And also, if you've got any suggestions for future guests that we have on, Pete just dropped a spoiler earlier on, which is fine, of someone coming on, and we've got others in the pipeline as well, either have played for the club or just support the club. You don't have to be the biggest name in the world. Whoever you are, you're a Wolves fan, and you're welcome to come on and share your story. Pete, before we close, anything else from yourself at all?
Yeah, just thank you for asking me to come on, because the Wolves Museum and what we do, the tours, it's very important, and I just encourage the fans to please come on a tour. If you've never been on a tour, please come to the talks. Please come to the museum. Keep up to date with Museum Monthly newsletter. Keep up to date with Museum Presents. The talk is, we're trying to keep the prices reasonable. We got £10 for the talk and £20 to see John Richards. So, please keep supporting us. And for those of you that listen that have supported us right since the start, 2012, thank you, because the Wolves Museum wouldn't be where it was today without everyone's support. So, and as you kind of touched on earlier, it is open to non-Wolves fans as well. If you're just a football fan or you're intrigued, come along, because on our tours, even our local rivals, look, we only want a bit of sense of humour with you. That's all. You are welcome, and please give it us back as well.
No, absolutely. Well, we have more in common, don't we? And we do. So it's great to kind of, like you say, we're football people ultimately, I guess, and I know people will welcome you as he does all the guests that come. So from both myself and Pete, it's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.